Sahana Vavatu, Sahana Bhunaktu, Sahaviryam Karavavai, Tejasvinavaditamastu, Ma Vidvishavahai. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. We are continuing with climbing the ladder of consciousness, so I will attempt to share the keynote. There we go. Very good. And we are up to part 13. Presentation continues what we were talking about last time, the box of Dharma, fulfilling Dharma. And it adds 4 additional practices for a total of 5. It's drawing material from the publisher's desk, Practice Makes Perfect, January 2011. Gurudeva named these 5 core practices as the Pancha Nitya Karmas and gave this overview of them. So he used the word nitya in a little unconventional sense. Nitya means obligatory, they're not optional, and it usually means daily. But Gurudeva used it in the sense that some of these 5 practices are daily, some are weekly, and some are yearly, but they're all obligatory. We could say that they are an amalgam of all the counsel of the Vedas and Agamas to guide daily and yearly religious life. These 5 obligatory religious practices are simple and applicable for all. Study them and put them into practice in your own life. Okay. See how awake you are. List the Pancha-Nitya Karmas. They are both a Sanskrit and an English name. You can list either or both. This definitely requires a couple of minutes. See if you can remember the Pancha-Nitya Karmas, Sanskrit, English, or even both. Upasana, worship, Utsava, holy days, Tirtha Yatra, pilgrimage, Dharma, virtuous living, and Samskars, or sacraments. These 5 duties faithfully performed are powerful tools to help us grow spiritually and move up the ladder of consciousness, which is the goal. Next, a short review of the concept of the box of Dharma from our 4th session. Living with Shiva, lesson 272. The 4 petals of the Muladhara chakra form a square. 3-dimensionally, 2 squares put together with a space between can well be defined as a box. This box is defined as Dharma. Briefly, at this point on the path to enlightenment, we put our cumulative karmas into a box called Dharma. Once encased within Dharma, the various karmas may fight each other. As the individual progresses on the path, the box lightens and rises. The box of Dharma is the base from which the aspirant must live at this point. Oh, what does it mean to put our karmas into the box of Dharma? It means that whatever experiences we attract to ourselves, our karmas, we handle them according to the principles of Dharma. We don't do anything that's adharmic. We don't do anything that's violent. We don't get angry. We don't do something dishonest as a way of solving a challenge. We respond to the experiences we are attracting in a totally dharmic way. And therefore, the results that come out of that are much better than if some of our responses had been adharmic. Strictly contained, he may rise through the hole in the top of the box in consciousness, or open a hole in the bottom of the box, and seek freedom without responsibility in the world of darkness. To seek freedom in the chakras above is the sanmarga. To seal off the hole at the bottom of the box is his sadhana. Penitent tapas, japa, bhakti, and Shiva Thondu, all of which is eloquently explained in Merging with Shiva. Who holds the lid on the box? Community pressures, both religious and secular. There are certain things you can do and certain things you can't do. So community pressure is very important. End of Gurudeva's quote. Few concluding thoughts on Dharma, as was mentioned in the first session on climbing the ladder of consciousness. The core teaching of all the major religions is to provide guidance to human beings so that in pursuing their natural ambitions to achieve wealth and love, they do so in a manner that adheres to virtuous and dutiful living. In other words, all religions provide a means to live within the box of Dharma. Oh, Hinduism isn't unique. It's common to all religions. That's what they're trying to do, is keep us doing the right things and avoiding the wrong things. As we know, Abhayar's attitude, first verse. Aram se virumbu. Aram is the ancient Tamil word for Dharma, or desire to fulfill Dharma. Beautiful statement, easy to remember. Now we turn to each of the remaining 4 Pancha-Nitya karmas. Describe the practice of upasana. What's it include? The core practice that I recommend focusing on first is daily worship in the home shrine, preferably before dawn. Every Hindu home should have a place of worship. I won't read it all. Picture of the Guru, picture of the deity. If you're at a university, a single photo may have to do. So we at least light a lamp, ring a bell, and pray daily. That's kind of the minimum upasana. And those who are more devout hold a formal worship ritual or Atmarta Puja, and of course they need to have learned how. So daily worship is called upasana, no matter how simple, even if it's just standing in front of the shrine and praying every day, that's upasana. Daily worship in the home shrine. We can also go to the shrine for blessings before leaving for work or school. At other times during the day, in the evening, we center ourselves when we get upset by the experiences of life. What does the practice of utsava include? So utsava literally means festival, of course, but Gurudeva uses it in a slightly different way. Second expression of Hindu worship is Utsava, holy days, observing the same day each week as a holy day and celebrating the major festival days throughout the year. On their weekly holy day, the family clean and decorate the home altar, attend the nearby temple, and observe a fast. To make such weekly visits practical, Hindus seek to live within a day's journey of a temple, and also not during a pandemic. Those who do not live close enough to a temple to visit weekly go as often as they can and do their best to at least attend the major festivals. So Gurudeva is starting here by saying it's twofold. Observing the same day each week as a holy day and celebrating the major festival days through the year. So that's the idea. And this next one I won't read because you're familiar with it. The temple is sacred because of three things and all. But the point is, it doesn't have to be a specific day of the week. It can depend on what's going on at the temple that you can relate to. For example, in temples in the U.S., Monday is Shiva's night, and that's when the Rudram group gets together and worships, attends Shiva Abhishekam and chants Rudram. So if that's what you want to do, then you could make Monday at such a temple your holy day of the week. Other temples in modern times, everything happens on the weekend, so you have no choice but to make Saturday or Sunday your holy day of the week because that's when the events take place. But there's a certain power in sticking to the same day each week. Subconscious gets used to it. It's easier to be consistent if you do something at the same time every day or on the same day every week. So this is Gurudeva installing a lingam. Beautiful photo there. It is through the murti that the presence and power of the deity is felt by devotees who attend the puja for blessings and grace, as we know. What does the practice of Tirtha Yatra include? Of course, it means pilgrimage. Third expression of Hindu worship is pilgrimage or Tirtha Yatra. At least once each year, a journey is made for darshan of holy persons, temples, and places, ideally away from one's local area. During this sojourn, God, gods, and gurus become the singular focus of life. All worldly matters are set aside. Thus, pilgrimage provides a complete break from one's usual day-to-day concerns. In other words, it's usually multiple days, and you have to have made arrangements to take care of your duties at your place of employment so they can do without you for a few days, and therefore you're able to make worshiping the deity more a singular focus. Special prayers are kept in mind, and penance or some form of sacrifice is part of the process. Actually, the preparation is as important as the pilgrimage itself. The days or weeks before Tirtha Yatra, devotees perform spiritual disciplines such as decreasing the intake of heavier foods or increasing lighter foods, fasting one day a week, doing japa, reading from scripture each night before sleep, and on weekends doubling the time usually spent in religious practices. So, inserting a comment. I think the pilgrimage that stands out is above average in strictness, of course, is the Sabarimala for Lord Ayyappa. Devotees are expected to follow a vratam, 41-day austerity period, prior to the pilgrimage. So this is a serious preparation. 41 days with special disciplines. During the 41 days of Vratam, the strict vegetarian, celibate, teetotalism, can't use any profanity and have to control anger, allow the hair and nails to grow without cutting. They must try their maximum to help others and see everything around them as Lord Ayyappa in action. Bathe twice daily, visit local temples regularly, and only wear plain black or blue-colored traditional clothing. So only in India would you see what I saw there on a plane going from Chennai, I think, to some further southern destination, and Ayyappa devotees were getting on the plane in their black clothes and they were barefoot. That's okay in India because they're on pilgrimage. Really charming. So that's a very strict one and sets a good example of what a preparation can be. Next one is my story about 2008. Every few months, a devotee planning a pilgrimage would write to me asking, are there any special sadhanas to do on the pilgrimage and in preparation? I did not have a standard reply at that time, so I needed to rethink about it for each person, which is very inefficient. Finally, I realized what was needed was a booklet with all my standard answers that we could email to them. So this was the origin of our Sadhana Guide booklet, which is on our website. As sadhanas are designed for here, but most of them could be done at any temple. The important point is it has separate sections for pre-trip sadhanas, which is what we were talking about with Sabarimala. Sadhanas for the various temple shrines and other sacred places when you're at your destination, and it also has post-trip sadhanas. So for a longer pilgrimage, you want to do all of that. Put in the adequate preparation ahead of time, during the pilgrimage, and then follow-up sadhanas afterwards to get the maximum out of it. And back to the Panchanicha Karmas, these three forms of worship, daily puja, holy days, and pilgrimage, help us to make consistent spiritual progress. Then, of course, the fifth one is samskara. What does the practice of samskara include? Our fifth practice is the observance of traditional rites of passage called samskaras. At these crucial ceremonies, an individual receives the blessings of God, God's guru, family, and community as he or she commences a new phase of life. These are boys at Muniji's Paramath Nikitan on the Ganges there. It looked pretty cold. First major samskara, of course, Namakarana. 11 to 41 days after birth, and there's no one way to do these things. The reason for a variety of when they're done is because of how different communities in India and Sri Lanka did them. Well, how many days retreat do you go on after something happens? So Gurudeva chose the system he was used to, which was the one from Jaffna. So the lengths of days that are in our writings usually are drawn from the Jaffna tradition, in case you're wondering. Anaprasana, Vidyaramba, important ceremonies. So all of these are for children. So of course, in terms of number of ceremonies, the greatest number occur before an individual is age 21. But then we get the really important one, Vivaha is marriage, and the last one, Antyeshti, important for helping the soul let go of the body, and for relatives to properly say goodbye. In summary, the box of discipline we live within now consists of 5 practices instead of 1. So the more practices, the better, is the idea in terms of how fast we climb up the ladder of consciousness. Strictly following these 5 traditional observances helps us advance day by day in our climb up the ladder of consciousness much faster than just the single practice of Dharma. So if we want to speed up, that's one way. Then a related topic is sadhana and daily vigil. There were a few ideas from Patanjali to set the mood. Patanjali defines yoga in verse 2. Yoga is the restraint of mental activities. Most individuals who talk to me about their efforts to do so, restrain mental activities, have great difficulty accomplishing this. So Patanjali gives a suggestion as how to succeed. The restraint of these mental activities is achieved through practice and dispassion. So of course, if we asked ourselves, how do we make progress? All of us participating today would say practice, because practice is the common answer. It's just like dancing. Key to becoming a good dancer is practice, daily practice. But Patanjali is pointing out that in addition to practice, the other important component is dispassion. In other words, the reason many of these mental activities are occurring is because of our attraction towards someone or something. Subsequent verses further elucidate. Practice is the exertion to achieve steadiness in the state of restraint. But this practice becomes firmly grounded only after it has been cultivated uninterruptedly and with devotion for a long time. Dispassion is the knowledge of mastery of one who is without thirst for objects that are seen or heard. The supreme state of dispassion is the non-thirsting for the gunas which arises from the perception of the purusha. So that terminology may not make any sense to you. So say it another way. This is the same idea as we looked at in session 12 of experiencing the realm of the Anahata chakra. The lowest of the chakras that is an expression of our soul, purusha or atma. In other words, we're searching for happiness, searching for fulfillment, and naturally we start by looking on the outside, and if we manage to find it, we can't hold it. It's the nature of happiness when we're totally dependent on finding it in people and objects on the outside. But the only place it exists where we can have it on a continuous basis is inside, in the 4th chakra, or by contacting our soul, purusha or atma. So when it says dispassion toward people, it doesn't mean we're distant from people or don't love people. It means we're not counting on somebody else to make us happy. Because passion is when a person or object outside of us is our source of happiness. So that's very unstable. Sometimes it happens, some days it doesn't. But this is the idea that we find fulfillment within ourselves, compassion, love, and share it with others. We pull those qualities out of our soul. Then we're loving, even more so, because we're not dependent on others' response to our love. And when the mind is not as active. Clearly, the expectation of success in meditation will come quickly is incorrect. Not only does practice need to be for a long time, as Patanjali says, but done without interruption and with devotion. And reducing misconceptions, I won't read them They really need to be explained.
What?
Dispassion does that as well. One reason practice needs to be done for a long time is that a changing of the subconscious mind is involved, and the subconscious changes slowly. This involves the concept of samskaras. So samskaras in the sense not of the sacraments, but in the other meaning. Every experience puts an impression in our subconscious mind. Ceremonies are only one type of samskara. Every event leaves an imprint in the subconscious mind. Samskaras are imprints left on the subconscious mind by experience from this or previous lives. Gurudeva explains, all actions, reactions, and pranic patterns from one life carry forward into the next, but in condensed or seed form as tendencies. Swami Shivananda's comment was, we carry it forward, but in summary form, and I think we did this one, so I won't read it word for word, but he compared it to accounting for a business. At the end of the year, you close the ledger. You've got thousands or millions of transactions. You just take the balance of those transactions without the detail and move it forward. So that's like what happens from one life to the next. We take the sum total of what we learned without all the detailed memories of each experience. But it does carry forward in summary form, just like accounting balances. Samskaras are also activators, constantly propelling consciousness into action. In this regard, they are described as subliminal activators. Restraint transformation is when the externalizing samskaras are subjugated by the appearance of restraint samskaras. These emerge in the mind at the moment of restraint. A tranquil flow of consciousness is produced by these restraint samskaras. Bhasya is needed, right? In other words, whenever restraint is employed, new samskaras are generated which subjugate the externalizing ones. Said another way, the more we practice restraining our thoughts, the easier it is to do so. Just the effort, doesn't mean we have to do well at it, just the effort to restrain the thoughts creates a samskara of strength, which reduces the tendency of the mind to want to focus on an external object. And the second way of transformation from externalizing and worldly to internalizing and spiritual is from mystical insights that come through deeper meditation. The scope of this mystical insight is distinct from the insight gained from scripture and inference owing to its particular purposiveness. A word you don't normally see. The samskara born from the mystical insight obstructs the other samskara. So same idea. Second way. By having insights, intuitions from our sub-superconscious mind, just having it changes the subconscious in a way that it's easier to control. Gurudeva's comment, after the subconscious mind has been very, very carefully reprogrammed into the contemplative lifestyle, which is what we've been talking about, there is little difference to us between the subconscious and the superconscious intuitional states. Therefore, basically, we have moved our awareness into an entirely new mind structure, or at least it seems new to us. It's actually been there all the time. This is called the sub-superconscious mind, or the area of the superconscious that has a subconscious which is connected with the physical body functions and everyday life affairs. In other words, the superconscious pure superconsciousness has nothing to do with our normal life. It's in a totally different realm. When we relate the superconscious to our normal daily life, it provides insights into that life, and that's called sub-superconscious. It's helping us with what's going on outside of us. Superconscious state is the total man functioning at a higher vibratory rate than he did when in the instinctive intellectual area. We can also say it's the Anahata chakra, the fourth chakra we were talking about living in last time. I should have added that. What is the superconscious mind? It is the subconscious of the devotee, well programmed in the contemplative life. This devotee can work within himself and move awareness freely through any area of the mind that he wants to, consciously, without being hindered by habit patterns and reactionary conditions of the past, which were programmed in the subconscious for him by parents, school teachers, friends, and the public in general, as he came along through life from birth. So that gives us a sense of what happens during a daily meditative practice. That was the reason it's there. You can see over time it's going to totally reprogram the subconscious mind, changing it into a vehicle for super consciousness, or for an expression of the Anahata chakra. Next part, which that was introductory to, is the concept of sadhana and the performance of a daily vigil. So, sadhana is defined in our lexicon. Effective means of attainment, self-effort, spiritual discipline, the way. Religious or spiritual disciplines such as puja, yoga, meditation, japa, fasting, and austerity. The idea of achieving an attainment is an important aspect of the concept of sadhana. In other words, it's not referring to an occasional spiritual practice, but rather one that is done regularly. Therefore, sadhana can also be described as a steady and persevering practice of a method or exercise prescribed for spiritual ends. If something's just done on occasion, it can't be called a sadhana. Steady and persevering practice of a method or exercise prescribed by spirit for spiritual ends. So that's what Patanjali was talking about when he uses the word abhyasa, which got translated as practice. Talking about sadhana, this steady and persevering practice. The term sadhana marga, coined by Yoga Swami, conveys the nature of the seriousness of the practice of sadhana. Our lexicon defines sadhana marga as a path of intense effort, spiritual discipline, and consistent inner transformation as opposed to theoretical and intellectual learning. The effect of sadhana is the building of willpower and the building of faith and confidence in oneself and in God, gods, and Guru. It also harnesses and transmutes the instinctive intellectual nature, allowing progressive spiritual unfoldment into the superconscious realizations and innate abilities of the soul, also known as Anahata chakra. So then we have Gurudeva's quote. Gurudeva explains how the daily vigil relates to sadhana. So this is very important. To Gurudeva, sadhana and daily vigil are really interchangeable, meaning a practice is really a sadhana only if you do it every day in a consistent way. To give sadhana a place in your life, you must establish a daily vigil. Yes, Gurudeva. The ideal time is early in the morning, just after bathing, before you start to think about the activities of the day and your various responsibilities and plans. A vigil held at the same time every day is an excellent way to budget the necessary time for sadhana in our busy modern times. Here is a traditional pattern. Each day, hundreds of millions of Hindus awaken for the last fifth of the night, bathed on fresh clothing, apply sectarian marks called tilaka, and sit in a clean, quiet place for religious disciplines. Facing east or north, the devotional puja rites of Bhakti Yoga are performed. Hatha Yoga, hymn singing, japa, and chanting are often included. Then follows scriptural study and meditation, listening to the sound current and contemplating the moon-like inner light. The duly initiated practice advanced yogas, but only as directed by their guru. In summary, what we're doing is replacing the pancha-nicha karmas of upasana, daily worship, with a daily vigil that has more practices and is done with greater consistency. So we're not adding a sixth practice. That's the point this is trying to make. We still have 5 practices, but upasana is one part of the daily vigil, the bhakti yoga part. But all the other parts have been added on, depending on how much time our daily vigil takes. And of course, our basic principle is the more practices we have, the faster we progress on the climb up the ladder of consciousness. Thank you very much.